And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Saturday, December 30th, 2023. And if you'd like additional weather information that I provide in this YouTube broadcast, you can go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It brings you to a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left. And if you point and click anywhere on this map, it'll pull up a local forecast for anywhere in the nation, including any relevant watches, warnings, or advisories. And a quick check here of what's going on in the lower 48 to round out 2023. Of note that jumps out, we have frost freeze warnings here for the southeast, southern parts of Georgia into North Florida, and then a winter weather advisory for the upper Mississippi Valley, including parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois, for some light snow and precipitation will be affecting that area. But here in Alaska, we're rounding out 2023. It's going to transition to a rather active and stormy early New Year weather pattern. There are going to be at least a couple of notable storms come out of the Bering Sea. In addition, we're going to have winds picking up not just across areas of the west and Arctic coast, but also across the interior. And it's going to lead, in some locations, developing blizzard conditions, especially there along the Arctic coast and parts of the west coast. The Arctic coast is going to see winds gust as high as 75 miles an hour here as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week ahead. Now, we're also going to see winds develop across the interior Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday time frame, and that's going to create areas of blowing snow and very low wind chills due to a very tight pressure gradient between high pressure up in the Arctic Ocean and these lows coming up out of the North Pacific, moving into the Bering Sea and at times sections of the Gulf. And also, the Gulf Coast and Panhandle are going to get in on some of this active weather, but by far a couple of the strongest storms are going to be coming up through the Bering Sea here as we have the week ahead here around and certainly after the new year. Looking at a couple of the FAA webcams in the far north, Utqiagvik, clear and cold, 9 below. See nice clear skies there. Point Hope, also clear, 9 above. These areas, be prepared. If you're along the Arctic coast, anywhere Point Hope up through Utqiagvik eastward to Kaktovik, a significant amount of wind will be setting up here as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and early Friday. It could lead to severe blizzard conditions, whiteouts. Winds could gust as high as 75 miles an hour in some areas. These northeast winds will create considerable blowing and drifting snow, making travel impossible and extremely dangerous at times. So keep that in mind. You're being forewarned because there is a winter storm watch for that blizzard conditions that are expected to develop here right after the new year. Now, Kipnik there in the southwest coast is going to see active weather set up as we go through New Year's Day, especially Wednesday, Thursday of next week, as a stronger low moves out into the east central Bering. In the meantime, though, still relatively quiet weather, mostly cloudy skies today, a few breaks in the clouds, temperature at 8 above. Now, Talkeetna, mostly sunny early this afternoon with a temperature at 18 below. The low there this morning was 27 below. Areas of the interior have seen temperatures approach 40 below in some of the normally cold spots. Tanana was down to 37 below zero earlier this Saturday morning. So definitely some cold air across the interior, and you start throwing in the winds that'll pick up as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That's going to lead to low wind chills and blowing snow. So flood advisory remains in effect tonight through mid-morning Sunday for the Ward Lake recreational area near Ketchikan because of recent heavier rainfall and snowmelt. So some minor flooding of low-lying and poor drainage areas is possible in the vicinity of the Ward Lake recreational area through at least mid-morning Sunday. These are the winter weather watches, advisories, warnings. Currently, we have winter weather advisories here for north of Fairbanks up through the Yukon Flats, up the lower portion of the Dalton Highway toward Coldfoot. These areas have picked up 3 to as much as 7 inches of snow today, and additional light accumulations possible tonight with some blowing and drifting. That should settle down, though, by early Sunday morning. We have a wind advisory for the eastern Alaska Range around Donnelly, the upper Richardson River for the day later tonight, and certainly during the day on Sunday, as we're going to see winds increasing and gusted times up over 50 miles an hour. But looking to the west, the special weather statement encompasses an area that will experience some accumulating snow, strong winds blowing and drifting snow, and the area in yellow, winter storm watch 4, and the impending storm that's going to come up out of the North Pacific, cross the central Aleutians on Tuesday, and then move up into the east central Bering Wednesday into Thursday. That could lead to some blizzard conditions there along the lower Yukon coast and St. Lawrence Island. But one of the areas is of concern, even though you're not going to get much in the way of actual snow accumulation, the Arctic coast, Point Hope, all the way up through Utqiagvik to Kaktovik. This area is under a winter storm watch for Tuesday through early Friday. That's a pretty long stretch. Strong northeast winds are going to develop across this region and could gust as high as 75 miles an hour, creating dangerous whiteout conditions and extremely cold and dangerous wind chills, making travel impossible at times. So be aware that conditions are really going to deteriorate across this area, the Arctic coast, North Slope, as we go into the early new year, especially Tuesday onward, because we got big high pressure sitting up in the Arctic Ocean, and then these lows that are coming out of the North Pacific into the Gulf and into the Bering Sea. That just tightens the pressure gradient across from the Arctic coast down and through the interior, and as a result, east-northeast winds will really pick up here around Tuesday and through midweek. Taking a look at the satellite imagery, we have a system here now producing some cloud cover and some light precipitation, and we don't expect any major problems with that. Here's that area of snow up in the east central interior that'll begin to wind down later tonight and early Sunday, and then kind of a hodgepodge of weak low circulations in through the Bering and along the Aleutian chain. As we look at the weather map here this Saturday afternoon, we have a weak low out entering the lower Gulf, and we have out to the west an area of low pressure out here toward and just north of the western Aleutians. By the time we get into late tonight, early on Sunday morning, kind of a collection of relatively weak lows here from the lower Gulf into the North Pacific. Not a whole lot going on with these. We have the low that's now kind of just north of the western half of the Aleutians, lower Bering Sea. And by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, we're starting to see a few things emerge. Here is a couple of lows out here in the Gulf. Could keep some showery rain, snow showers going along areas of the Gulf Coast Panhandle and certainly down here along portions of the Alaska Peninsula. But a stronger low will be coming up, and this is the initial low, is going to come up and head back toward the Alaska Peninsula by the time we get into New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. That could bring precipitation and windier conditions here, the Alaska Peninsula, into the eastern Aleutians. By the time we get into New Year's Day, that low will continue working its way north-northwestward with impacts along the Alaska Peninsula with some wind and precipitation. But here comes that strong low. That is the low that will be crossing the central Aleutians on Tuesday and eventually work its way into the central and then east central Bering Sea. And that's what has prompted the winter storm watch for the lower Yukon Delta and St. Lawrence Island, because there certainly could be considerable amount of blowing and drifting snow along with accumulating snow. And then on top of that, by the time we get into Tuesday, with that strong low coming into the Bering and with this high pressure up around 1045 millibars in the Arctic Ocean, the pressure gradient along the Arctic coast and through much of the mainland here is really going to tighten. That's going to lead to an increase in northeast to east winds. And as I mentioned, the winds along sections of the Arctic coast, any of these points stuff that are traditionally quite windy, could see gusts as high as 75 miles an hour with whiteout conditions here through much of the midweek. So in the meantime, we got temperatures along the Arctic coast that are going to be down near a bit below freezing. Along the Panhandle coast. And then as we go up into the interior, easily 23 below, maybe even a bit colder than that at Glen Allen, on over toward Talkeetna, again, at least 20-something below. And then for Sunday afternoon, temperatures do recover back up into the 30s with some 40s. There's actually been pretty mild air at times trying to poke through there and warm things up. We're looking, though, back here, daytime highs still below zero in the Copper River Basin as you get up the Susitna Valley toward Talkeetna, and certainly as you approach the Alaska Range. Monday morning lows, maybe not quite as cold there in the Copper River Basin and up through the upper Susitna Valley, but we're looking for lows still near or below freezing in the Panhandle. Coming upwards, so not as cold in the Anchorage Bowl as it has been here through the course of much of the late week and this weekend. And Monday afternoon, we should get temperatures again back up at least into the lower 40s along the outer and southern portion of the Panhandle. Still below zero, Copper River Basin, and temperatures getting into the 20s, especially along areas of south central. And as you get toward the coast, could be as warm as 39 at King Salmon and at Kodiak. Now across the interior, many temperatures below zero. There will be isolated areas back down probably near 30 below where skies are clear and winds are light. And then for Sunday afternoon, temperatures single digits above and below zero, generally the rule. Could be, get a little downslope, 15 degrees at Nanana or over toward here, like say Nome could be 15 near the water there, and ice of Norton Sound. Monday morning lows start to fall off. We got lows below zero here across the North Slope and along the Arctic coast, also across much of the interior, everybody below zero. And that's New Year's Day. And New Year's Day afternoon, temperatures stay below zero, North Slope and along the Arctic coast. And by later New Year's Day into Tuesday, we're going to start to see those northeast to east winds really begin to pick up here along the Arctic coast. And that's going to get the snow blowing and eventually stronger winds setting up here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that could lead to severe blizzard conditions and whiteouts. Now, across the southwest interior, below zero. Sunday morning, coldest readings like McGrath could be in the 20s below zero. And I'm sure some pockets there in the upper Kuskokwim Basin that get really cold. Temperatures still below freezing, extending out much of the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. High Sunday afternoon should get back up mid-upper 30s most areas. And then Monday morning, we expect lows again to be near or a bit below freezing, even extending out through the Aleutian chain. And then Monday afternoon, temperatures, again, mid-upper 30s, maybe an isolated 40-degree reading or two here along the Alaska Peninsula, as readings will approach 40, as I mentioned, on New Year's Day around Kodiak City, as well as on up toward King Salmon. But looking ahead here into the early start of the new year, January 5th through the 9th, what's notable is temperatures are going to average above normal, centered over the southwest, especially the western mainland. Well, it's January then, and temperatures are still cold enough for mainly snow, with the exception of maybe along some of the coastal areas that tap into some of the warmer air that comes in ahead of these lows. This means these areas here, the western half of the state, could see above normal precipitation. That could be mainly in the form of some snow, especially as you get inland up the Yukon River and up through this area of the west. So expect more adverse weather potentially with the lows that come in between, New Year's Day and January 10th. And precipitation is expected to average above normal because we're going to be pulling in moisture coming up out of the North Pacific with these storms that then cross through the Bering Sea with the various frontal systems. So areas of south central and southwest and western Alaska could see precipitation averaging above normal here to start the early new year.